All right, so we're going to keep going. We're still in chapter 14, but now we're going to move on to plants. And you can love them, hate them, but they're quite fascinating, and we do hopefully appreciate them a little bit more after today. So key characteristics about plants. They are eukaryotes, so we are still in domain eukaryote, but we're in kingdom Plantae. Now they're going to be multicellular, and what's unique about them, they are autotrophs, so they make their own food source. Now moving on to where we use primarily sexual reproduction. We're going to shift back to where asexual is an option when we get back to the animal kingdom, but plants are going to use sexual reproduction. They do have cell walls where they have cellulose. And you're going to find them in both the land and the water. This book primarily focuses on land plants. I don't know why, but that's just the way they decide to flow. But they are found in both environments. And they were primarily in the water first, and then they moved to characterize and colonize the land. Now, they do not move from place to place. They are sessile. And you're going to find a large and varied group, about 300,000 catalog species. As I mentioned, they were only aquatic at first, but then they did transition to land. Now, when you move to land, there's several advantages. Why would you leave an environment that you're just fine in? Well, in land, there's unlimited sunlight. Think about in oceans and stuff, the sunlight can only go so far down, so you're limited to the areas that you can colonize. But if you go on land, unlimited amount of sunlight. There's also an abundant amount of carbon dioxide. CO2 levels are a lot higher, increased there than they are in the water. So you have the key components that you need for photosynthesis. Now, initially there were a few pathogens are in herbivores, so there's not anything really to go through and target you early on. So it made sense to move to land. Now, when you move to land, you have to overcome several things. First off is water loss, because you are going to be out there. Yes, more sunlight, but one of the disadvantages is that sunlight is going to dehydrate you. So you have to find a way to combat that. So you're going to see development of a cuticle, which is like a waxy covering. Now, some of them don't have this, so they still got to live close to a water source. You're going to have to obtain resources from the soil and the air and move these resources throughout the plant. So we're going to have the development of vascular tissue happen also. We have to develop a support system, which is the root system, so we can grow taller, and that might give us some advantages too. And then we had to come up with new ways of reproduction. So this led to the development of spores and seeds and fruits. So what are the different organ systems? You don't think of organs with plants, but we kind of had to develop them and classify them as organisms. So similar cells that work together form tissues. And then you have different types of tissues that come together to form a specific function as an organ. So in vascular plants, we're going to break them up into two distinct organ systems, the roots and the shoots. Now, the shoot system is going to be the vegetative, which is going to be the non-reproductive parts. Think of these as the leaves and the stems. So if you look at this little dandelion right here. And then it's also going to include the reproductive parts, which is the flowers and the fruit. And then the other organ system was the root system. So let's talk about them a little bit more. So in our shoot system, we have the stems. So you're going to have a lot of variety when it comes to stems. They can range from the length from a few millimeters to hundreds of meters, and the diameter is going to vary too. These are just two images of different types of stem. One is a tree and one is a more, I forgot what type of plant this bottom was. And when you see the stems, they're usually going to be above ground, and you can see a variety. They can be soft or hard in nature. Now, their purpose is support, holding the leaves, flowers, and buds, and also a place for food storage. Now, one of the key roles is transportation of water and minerals to different parts of the plant. So you're going to have this vascular tissue that is going to be part of the stems. So if you heard the terms xylem and phloem. Now, these are different bundles that we're going to use throughout the system to either move. If you're the xylem, you're going to move water and dissolve minerals. And if it's the phloem, it's going to be the movement of sugars. Also part of the shoot system is the leaves, and this is where all the magic of photosynthesis happens. Now we're going to see a wide variety when it comes to number, size, shape, and placement of leaves. It just varies. It's actually kind of fun to look at the differences. Now if you look on the leaves, we see stomata. So these are the little pores, these are an example right there, and this is where we have gas exchange, where the oxygen leaves and the CO2 goes in. So these are little holes, and they open and close, so we don't lose a lot of water through the plant, through the stomata. Now on the leaves, you'll normally see the cuticle, which is a waxy layer above ground, mostly part of the plant, and that's going to help prevent with water loss due to evaporation. So the other major system, the roots. So we talked about the shoots, now the roots. Now these are going to be your below ground tissues, and there's two main types. You're going to have taproots and fibrous roots. Now taproots are going to be like this main group that's going to grow down vertically, and then you might see some smaller ones that rise off that. Now fibrous roots, they're going to go closer to the soil surface, so these are going to be more diverse in network. It's going to be more of a network, and it's going to spread out further. The main goal of the roots is to draw water and minerals from the soil, and also as a source for food storage. So if you remember with the fungi, some of them have a relationship with this mycorrhizae, where they can actually survive in a nice relationship with the roots, and both of them kind of benefit from this relationship. So just a recall of photosynthesis, you don't have to go through remember the horrible steps, but remember photosynthesis is the process how they make their energy. So they take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and combine it with water and use light energy from the sun to make sugar and oxygen. So remember there's light reactions, and then there's the dark reactions. The light reactions is where we're going to harvest the electrons, and we're going to use that to kind of go through and process the carbon dioxide in the dark reactions and convert it into the sugars. So these two processes work together, super essential because we need the oxygen, and we make plenty of CO2 that they need to go through and filter out too. So moving to land, we had to kind of, one of the adaptations is how we go through reproduction, because reproduction in water is quite simple. You just release all the sperm and eggs and hopefully everything comes together. But in land, we had to find new ways to protect the gametes and the embryos moist. And how do we get them dispersed? Because water is just there, you just release it and it goes. So we had to find protection and prevent them from drying out. So one way that plants do is they figured out how to use animals to help them through the process of pollination. So they're going to use it to lure them there, like bees. So they use nectar to lure the bees to the flower. Pollen attaches to the bees go to the next flower, deposit the pollen. So it's a whole process of working smarter, not harder. Now, when you think about plants, most of the time you think about seeds, you got to plant in the ground, but not all plants are going to utilize seeds. It all comes down to the type of gametes. And I'll introduce a few different types of reproduction in the different groups. But first I need to introduce, let's make it confusing slide. So this is one of the things I hate about plants, is they just make this confusing. So they're going to use what's called an alteration of generations on their life cycle. So it's going to have part of its life where it's going to be in the haploid state, and part of its life is going to be in the diploid state. So remember, haploid has half the number of chromosomes, and diploid has 2 sets, all right, the mom and the dad coming together. So if we kind of go through right here. So we're going to begin life as a diploid state formed from the fusion of haploid gametes from a male and a female. Boom. So male, female comes together. We have the zygote. We're going to go through several months of mitosis and to form what's called the sporophyte. Now, the sporophyte can just stay in its own stage right here. It's in this diploid state. But eventually it's going to undergo meiosis. And remember, in meiosis, the goal is to produce the gametes, which are haploids. Now, these are going to be called spores, and these spores can undergo mitosis and grow into an entire organism, which is called the gametophyte. So it's only going to be a one-in organism. So the entire organism is a haploid. Now, they can go through the process of releasing his gametes again, and the process just goes around and around and around. Now, depending on the plant, it will spend more time in one, either the sporophyte or the gametophyte phase. It all depends over that. I'll hit on some of the reproductive cycles. Don't freak out too much. Remember, you do get to use notes on the books, and I've tried to make sure not to ask too many questions on it. So plants as resources, we use them a lot. Very essential for agriculture. We use the fruits and grains for food. Like as I mentioned, there's that huge seed bank in Norway, which is quite essential, and it's getting kind of scary because it's starting to warm up there. And for seeds, if you store them at a low cold temperature, they can stay pretty much indefinitely. We use a lot for lumber, a lot of our buildings, flowers for perfume and decoration, a lot for medicine. This is a big category right here, especially if you're going through the natural route. We use a lot of it. Very essential for the ecosystem. They are essential for providing us oxygen and establishing the habitat and soil stability. You know, if you see all these floodings and stuff, what happens is when they get rid of the plants, where's the water going to go? Well, the water's going to go there. There's no plants to hold down the soil, and it's just a big old cascade of bad things happening. And then we also use them for fossil fuels. So you'll see this show up, and this is how we're going to break it up. And like I said, this book primarily focuses on land plants, but we're going to break it up into two big groups. So we're going to have the non-vascular and then the vascular plants. So the non-vascular are going to lack vascular tissue and seeds. So it's going to be this small group right here. And we'll talk about them a little bit in detail in the next lecture. And then you're going to have the vascular ones. So they have vascular seeds, but we break them up into two subgroups. So seedless plants and then those that have seeds. So the next lecture will be over this group right here. And then we'll have boom, boom, one on gymnosperms and one on angiosperms. Now, this is a cool video. It talks about 10 really cool different types of plants out there. And I think it's really cool. And like I said, always worth the watch. So here's some plant overview videos. And then, of course, credit to all my images.